Hello everybody, this is Chris and this is our voice chat for June 10th, 2020. Let's get started. Bit of traffic here in Bucharest, Romania, so we're starting a bit late, 10 minutes late to be more precise. And today we're gonna talk about Adobe XD, basically Photoshop and all those other tools, Figma, Affinity, all those tools that are available, GIMP, Illustrator, and whatnot. Because I really get this question a lot, especially in private messages. Chris, what design tool should I learn? What should I use? And it's a really complicated subject that I'm gonna try and break down in this next half an hour, probably less. Because the basic idea, if you're really short on time and you want the definitive answer, it's the following. Even though I'm a Photoshop expert and certified instructor, and I've been using the program for about 12 years now, I think, or something like that, I think you should use whatever you want. That's the bottom line. That's the only thing that you should be concerned about. Use whatever you like, because all of these design programs, they're a tool. What matters is what you do with it. It's basically like I said in a conversation I had with the guys at Adobe, with some product managers, with two of them. Basically, Photoshop is like a hammer, right? You can use that hammer to create memes, to break windows, to just be destructive or just, be silly about it, create a wooden toy or whatever. Or you can use Photoshop, that hammer in this case, to build your dream home, a nice vacation home, a lodge or whatever. So I really feel like that encompasses all these design programs, and that basically solves this issue regarding what you should use. Use whatever you like. What matters isn't what you use. What matters is how you use it, right? I think the skill in itself is a big part of it. It's similar to a chef, right? Obviously, chefs want the best materials, the best knives, and gas stoves and whatnot. But at the end of the day, what matters most is obviously the skill of the person. So now the thing is the following. Regarding Photoshop versus all these other tools, I haven't used every single tool out there, but the discussion is as follows. People say, okay, Chris, why are you using Photoshop? It's 2012. Use Illustrator. You have to use Illustrator. That's pure vector based. With Illustrator, you can blow it up, your design, you can blow it up to any size whatsoever, and you can, do all sorts of things with it. Again, that's a valid argument. Then some people come in and say, hey, okay, Chris, why don't you use Figma? It's totally free. Use Figma. It's great for collaborative work. It's totally great, Or some may say, okay, Sketch is great for UI work. Sketch is the industry standard if you're on a Mac. Everybody that is in design that has a Mac, they use Sketch. Some people say, okay, Adobe XD because it's so streamlined, it's so powerful and fast and whatnot. And then other people come in and say, hey, I've been using GIMP for 5 years now. GIMP is totally free. It's a great alternative. It's very similar to Photoshop. Others say, okay, Affinity Designer, or the Affinity Illustrator, I think it's called, or something like that. In any case, we have at least 5 solid programs that you can use to design, right? Now, before I get into this part a bit more, let me tell you about video production, which is totally unrelated. It would seem like it would be totally unrelated, but video production is something that has divided people into two camps for a long time. People have been either with Premiere Pro, Adobe Premiere Pro, which is mostly the industry standard, and nowadays we have DaVinci Resolve. So Premiere Pro versus DaVinci Resolve. Premiere Pro obviously is paid. It's a paid program and you have to pay a monthly subscription. DaVinci Resolve is totally free. They basically make their money by selling hardware. Now, I've used both of them as a content creator, and basically, bottom line, you can look on YouTube. It's only these two big players, only 2 of them. So it's again, let me write this. So it's Premiere Premiere Pro versus DaVinci Resolve. If you look at on the forums, on YouTube and whatnot, nobody can tell you with precision one is better than the other. There's no consensus. Some people use Premiere Pro, they switch back to, they go to DaVinci, then they come back. Others do the other thing. But basically, there's no bottom line. I myself have used both of these programs, and it's really tricky, because both are great. They have their strong points, they have their low points. But basically, what I'm trying to say is we have two big choices, because other programs like Vegas Pro or other programs, they're not as great. Basically, it's just these two. And people still don't know what to choose. It's somewhat similar to Intel versus AMD. There's no consensus, okay, go with that, like BMW versus Mercedes. It's basically use whatever you want to use. So with just two programs, people are split, right? You have hardcore fans that say, okay, Premiere Pro is the best there is. Other people say, hey, DaVinci Resolve is much, much better. And there are several reasons I won't get into. I spent too many hours of my life breaking this down and looking something for myself. So there's no consensus. So if there's no consensus for two programs, how can there be one for 6, 7, 8 programs between Photoshop and Illustrator and, again, Adobe XD and whatnot? So you shouldn't try and get to the bottom of it. There's no one solution. The same thing regarding, Android versus iOS. There's no clear-cut solution. There are advantages. There are clear advantages. You can make a breakdown. You can make a list in terms of performance, reliability, user-friendliness, stability, and whatnot. You can make that. And based on that list, you can make your own choice. And you can decide, okay, I prefer to use Premiere Pro. I prefer to use Adobe XD or whatever. But that's your choice. So that's really what I'm trying to get right here. That's the essence. You shouldn't try and impose your design program of choice to anyone else, because your religion isn't better than anyone else's. Whether, whatever religion you are, it doesn't matter. Yours isn't better. You keep to yourself, and that's it. Your belief is your belief. Your design program is your design program. So if you're a die-hard fan of Sketch, that's totally fine, my friend. If you're dead set on using Figma, then use Figma, and that's totally fine. Now, what I'd like to say is, I think, if you're asking me as a personal opinion as of right now, I think Adobe XD is probably the future in terms of graphic design and user interface design, prototyping. I think probably Adobe XD is going to become the next household name, but it's never going to be as close to as big as Photoshop is. So let's take a step back, right? If you think about a basketball player, you probably think about Michael Jordan, right? If you think about a football player, you think of Messi or Ronaldo or whatever. So every industry has a heavyweight, right? A giant. In the design world, Photoshop is that giant. Unequivocally, without question, everybody knows Photoshop. I think even your grandma probably knows about Photoshop, right? If you tell her, I'm pretty confident that if you ask 100 people, I think at least 95% of them will probably say they've heard of Photoshop. Maybe 90%, maybe 85%, but it's really close, right? So a huge number. Adobe XD is never going to be that big. Nor is Figma or Sketch or anything else. I think the market is going to be really fragmented, and I think that's going to be the future going forward. I think for at least the following 3 to 5 years, we're not going to have a heavyweight. We're not going to have something, that everybody uses. But the good thing about that, I'm not sure if you guys have seen Mastered Web Design in Photoshop, the updated version. But in Mastered Web Design in Photoshop, I basically explain why your design program of choice doesn't matter. Basically, I'm going to explain it in a nutshell. Basically, what you do is you connect another program, Zeppelin in this case. You connect another program to Photoshop or Adobe XD or whatever. And through that program, That program basically takes all your assets, all your graphics, all your CSS code, all your icons, whatever, just about everything. It takes those assets and it makes them in a package where the coders can actually use them. So that means that at the end of the day, if you're designing an app, if you're designing a website, whatever you're designing, and you want to collaborate with some other person, whether it's a developer, a client, or whatever, that third-party program is going to do all the heavy lifting. You won't share your PSD file with anyone else. That's fantastic. So really think about that. So if you create a website right now, you won't have to send the PSD to your client. You won't have to send that PSD to your coder or to the agency or to the freelancer. That doesn't happen. So if the coder doesn't have Photoshop, that's fine. If the coder doesn't have Figma, that's fine. So that's the thing. Or if he doesn't have the skills to use those programs, right? Because what we do is sometimes we create hover states and we hide them, right? We mark them in a folder that's invisible. Maybe we color code that folder, that group, but that's about it, right? And then what you have to do is you have to babysit that coder and tell him, okay, that button, it has a hover state, look for it in the layers panel. Maybe he doesn't even know where the layers panel is. Maybe he has CS6. Maybe he has Photoshop Elements. So how do you bridge that gap? Well, through these third-party programs. So again, just to be clear, in terms of what's going to happen in the next couple of years in terms of designing, there won't be a giant like Photoshop ever again. There won't be a household name where everybody has to use it, where everybody has to have it installed, have it updated and whatnot. That's not going to be the case. What's going to happen most likely is that everybody's going to use whatever they want. And we're gonna use all these third-party programs and all these formats to basically bridge any gap. Because again, come to think of it, if you wanna send something to a client or just about everyone here on the web, if I wanna send you a document, I'll probably gonna send you a PDF. Why a PDF and not a spreadsheet or a document, a Word document or any other format? Because PDF is likely gonna work on every single phone, on every single computer and whatnot, right? So that's going to be the same thing in terms of your design program. Use whatever you want. It won't matter for the client. It won't matter for his team. So at the end of the day, you do whatever you want. Now, going back to my original point, I think I'll personally start to use Adobe XD more and more. I think Adobe XD is what Photoshop should have been first and foremost. Basically, here's the deal. Photoshop is plagued with one single problem. It's too bloated, it's too big, it's too slow. This is the only problem Photoshop has. It's not the fact that it's not 100% vector based. It's not anything else. It's the fact that it's slow. That's the only problem, and I've addressed this issue in countless conference calls with the guys at Adobe and the various meetings I had. It's basically too slow. It's a mammoth because it lumps around all these features that nobody uses. It has so many features that nobody actually uses. Did you know you could actually edit a movie in Photoshop? You can do video editing in Photoshop. It's silly. You can do obviously animations in Photoshop. You can do 3D in Photoshop. It's so bloated. It has so many features that's become this mammoth, this cruise ship that can't easily turn left or right. Now, on the other hand, Adobe XD, it's like a jet ski. It's really fast, really fast. You can turn it on a dime. You can easily maneuver it. It fits in tight spaces. You can use it for all sorts of things now. It doesn't have a band like on a cruise ship. It doesn't have a buffet like on a cruise ship. So it's missing a lot of things, but that's to be expected, right? So that's basically the difference between Photoshop and Adobe XD. Adobe XD is much faster. You're gonna fall in love with it when you use it because it's so lightweight. It's so easy to get. It zooms in so crisp. It's like that 60 FPS video, right? When you see everything so clearly. You love it. It feels like, it's gliding. It moves effortlessly. No matter if you're designing whatever, one screen or 50 screens, that's what people immediately love. And the interface, it's so simple. You only have 6 tools or so. So this is why a lot of people are moving towards Adobe XD, because it's so streamlined. It feels so easy. You feel like, okay, this is what a design program is supposed to look like. But then the problem is Adobe XD is riddled with issues. Adobe XD right now, it's basically a huge corporation that I feel lacks leadership. And because there's no leader, because there's no Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or whatever, the company has no one particular plan, no one particular goal. And because of that, you'll see things like whatever, random examples. If you want to left align things, you can left align things in Photoshop, in Illustrator, in After Effects, in Premiere Pro. You can left align things, elements, layers, in loads of Adobe programs. Adobe programs are built by Adobe, right? The same company. Well, in certain parts, left align is the first icon. In other parts, is the fourth icon. So it's a lack of consistency that's not cool. That shows that there's no leadership. In some places, when you want pure white, you have to go to the bottom left side of the color picker. In other parts, you have to go to the bottom right. So it's all these things that don't make any sense. All these hotkeys that don't make any sense. These interface changes across programs that doesn't make any sense. All these changes from Photoshop CC 2019 to 2020, 2018, 2019, 2020, all these are riddled with problems because of a lack of leadership, right? So when you try and use these programs, you get hit in the face with various things that don't make any sense. That's the allure, that's the glamour of Photoshop. This is why so many people use it, because in Premiere Pro, I right-click and boom, Photoshop opens. I right-click and Adobe Audition opens. I click Control-S and then it saves immediately in that product. So I think, again, this is the value of Photoshop versus all the other programs, that it has an ecosystem built around it. The problem is it lacks leadership. So because of that, sometimes you don't get the full benefit of using the same program, right? So coming back to Adobe XD, this has been one of the worst things I've ever experienced because it had so much potential. Adobe XD was something that I was looking for since I saw the presentation where it was called Project Comet in 2015. It finally came out on Windows, I think after 9 months or 12 months after being available on Mac. At the minimum, it was 9 months. And I was actually considering buying a Mac, especially for this program. I was stumped to see that I couldn't use it on Windows. I had no idea why they chose to do something like that, incredibly controversial. Okay, finally, 2016 or so, they launched it. And then, month after month, they've created updates. Month after month, they've added things. After 4 years in development, I'm still not happy. After 4 years in development, the program still sucks. At certain things, it's absolutely horrible. It's absolutely terrible. It's big things, it's small things, it's a number of things. If you look on, various Facebook groups, forums and whatnot, you can see how people, they're so upset about loads of things. For example, they've just introduced grids. Guides. So they've just introduced guides. I was shocked to see that, they just came out with that. So if you wanted to align things, you didn't have any guides. You can't customize your interface at all. You can't have your layers panel open and have the assets panel open. There's loads of things that don't make any sense. There's loads of things that are, just ridiculous. Ridiculous, there's absolutely no way else to describe it. So it's really frustrating. For example, let me just something that I've actually just looked up on Facebook. Look in the general channel, Photoshop and Illustrator versus Premiere. This is the same program, the same company, right? How can the same company be so inconsistent? again, this seems so trivial. It doesn't seem like a big deal. But when you have 10, 20, 50 things like that, it really gets on your nerves. So going back to Adobe XD, because I'm babbling here. Adobe XD is great, but it's not a replacement for the Photoshop. What I do most of the time is I do probably about 60% of the work in Adobe XD, and then I right click and I hit edit in Photoshop. What I work in Photoshop and then I import it in Adobe XD. So that's the thing. Even though Adobe XD seems so great, it's like that incredibly attractive woman. It's you wanna have a great relationship with her, but then you see that okay, it's great. It's great to have a relationship with her for a night or two or three, but it's not a long-term thing. You would much rather have a long-term commitment with something that you can rely on. So that's Adobe XD. You fall in love with it. You see all the glamour, all the speed, but then when you actually get into it, you see there's so many things that are missing and so many things that you can't really do without Photoshop. So that's Adobe's plan basically. With Adobe XD, they didn't want to replace Photoshop. They wanted to make a dedicated tool. So basically people like me that are basically doing UI work, app design, web design, graphic design, they could use a tool that was faster. It's really disappointing, to be honest, because again, I've had several meetings on it. It's when what people at Adobe don't really realize is the fact that even if I wanted, because I actually wanted to create a course about 2 years ago for the Adobe XD. The problem is even if I wanted, even if I did my best, you can't create a tutorial for a program that dramatically changes every 1 month, every 30 days. They fail to realize my value, and everybody on YouTube, on Udemy and whatnot, the instructors, the teachers, how much value we bring to them as a company. So if you change the close button from the right side to the left side, obviously that's going to confuse people. More than that, do you want the best marketing tactics from 2012? Obviously not. You want the best from 2020. So what happens with most students is they look at various tutorials, and if there's the tiniest interface change, a different icon or just very minor things, they feel like, okay, that tutorial is not cool. That tutorial is outdated. It's not worth it anymore. When actually, the difference, in terms of the last 5 Photoshop versions, it's minimal. It's 2%. It's Shift and Control Z. That's it. It's when you use Shift and when you use Control Z. That's it. That's the only difference since 2015, I believe. 2015.5. So all the rest, all these versions that come out, 2020, 2019, 2018, they have literally no big changes in them. Obviously, I'm being simplistic here just to make a point. There are various things, various improvements, but nothing that really actually makes sense, nothing that really impacts our lives as designers. Various small little things, tweaks and whatnot, but nothing that will really change your workflow and whatnot. But the problem is, again, Adobe doesn't realize that, when you change Photoshop's icon, by the way, they're going to change the icon yet again. I have 200,000 students on Udemy. If they're going to see the old icon, they're going to say, hey, this is outdated. I'm not going to use it, even though the content is 99% the same. So I'm sorry to be rambling here about my problems. But again, I want to make sure you guys realize what's happening with Adobe and Adobe's ecosystem and what's going to happen moving forward. I think things are going to be confusing. Things are going to be exactly like I said they're going to be. Adobe XD is not going to replace Photoshop. Adobe XD is going to be something of a niche, something of a subculture. I feel like, out of 200,000 students, I think maybe 10% are going to be interested in Adobe XD. And I think it's not going to be a skill that you really want to put in the first position on your CV. You're not going to want to say, okay, Adobe XD, I'm a specialist in Adobe XD. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Photoshop is still going to remain king due to its versatility. I think this Swiss Army knife is still the best. If you want to learn one thing, learn Photoshop. I still believe that, because again, with Photoshop you can design apps, you can design websites, you can design logos, you can design print. It's not going to be great at all of them. It's not going to be a seamless experience, but if you don't have time to learn 3 different programs, then I still think Photoshop is best. And again, due to what happened, due to how Adobe XD is managed, I don't think putting it on at the top of your CV is really gonna impress a lot of people. I feel like, again, it's gonna be nice to have, but yeah, I don't think it's gonna really help you out. So moving forward, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have another meeting with the Adobe XD guys, which are actually based in Romania. I'll see when they're available, so we can have another chat. And I'm gonna create a tutorial for it. And hopefully, what's gonna happen? It's gonna be at least 6 months relevant. I hope at least 6 months is gonna make sense. Because right now, remember, I do have an app design course where a big part of it is in Adobe XD, and obviously, loads of things have changed, because I as an instructor, I can't be expected to re-record every lecture every 30 days, because it's ridiculous, right? And I can't really cut and paste certain phrases and whatnot, because the entire flow changes. Because that's what these guys are doing. Basically, they've given us what Adobe has done with Adobe XD. They've basically given us a deconstructed cake. They've given us some flour to swallow, then some sugar, then some cream. And yeah, don't worry, guys, just eat it up, and then, after a while, it's gonna become a cake in your stomach. So this is what happened. And this is why I'm so upset with Adobe XD, because it seemed like a great thing, but the lack of leadership has made it into an incomplete program, and its flaws, it's not something that I can really explain in 30 minutes or so, but it has huge flaws as far as I'm concerned, that they're getting addressed. But I strongly believe this is why at one certain point that they made it completely free. They made it totally free because they realized, okay, we really we really didn't do a good job. Okay, let's Sketch is really pushing, Sketch is really eating up all the market share. Let's do something. Okay, let's make it free. And they actually made it completely free for a while. I think it's still free. I think you still have some limitations and whatnot, but yeah. So at the end of the day, use whatever program you want. If you're a beginner, specialize in Photoshop. Photoshop is gonna be much better on your CV versus Adobe XD. I will create an Adobe XD course. I will structure it in such a way where it's version independent. I will do my best to show you all the prototyping things and whatnot, which are, again, really cool and stylish. But again, I would not put all my chips on it, right? Because again, what I see in Review My Work in this channel on Discord, I see a lot of designs that aren't really all that great. So if you switch to Adobe XD, it's not really gonna help you. If you switch to Figma or to Affinity or to whatever, it's not really gonna help you. So focus on the fundamentals, learn to design, create beautiful stuff, and based on that, you can move forward and you can branch out. And again, what I would suggest is I would probably suggest you stick with Adobe, even though it's really so flawed. And I basically hammered them for 20 minutes. I would still stick to Adobe because of that integration. If you want your CV to look great, I really think that using Photoshop may be best, because if you get hired at an agency, I think, again, they're probably gonna use Premiere Pro. If they're gonna use Premiere Pro, works so well with Photoshop. With the libraries panel, is something that really goes well, and that edit function immediately in the timeline, that works really well. Other things don't work as well, but yeah, that's one of the things that goes well. So if you really want the best out of your CV, you should probably stick to Adobe programs. Learn Photoshop, learn Premiere Pro, learn Audition, After Effects, whatever. But yeah, I would probably stick with Adobe. So that's about it for today. 30 minutes. Yeah, we're gonna have another chat on Sunday. Sunday, probably at about the same hour or so. We'll see. I'm gonna make an announcement. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully, I didn't bore you too much with all these behind the scenes things with Adobe. Again, it's really frustrating because I read every single one of your questions. I read all the Q&As. I read all the assignments, all the private messages, and I see so many people struggle with various things, like what Photoshop version should I use, what program should I learn, and all this confusion. Unfortunately, I have to be in between you guys and Adobe. And I'm doing my best, but unfortunately, Adobe isn't making things easier. All in all, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm gonna go grab a bite to eat, and yeah, I'm gonna be on the chat later today and in the next couple of days. If you wanna have a chat there, feel free to write in. And yeah, the next podcast, let's call it a design podcast, is gonna be on Sunday. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll speak to you soon. Have a good one. Thank you.